Hello, beautiful divers. Welcome to another episode of Dive in Wonder. I hope you guys are having a gorgeous, beautiful, amazing week. I wanted to make this podcast quite fast after everything that's been happening politically over the past weeks because a lot of us are under a lot of stress. And I was seeing my friends and watching myself reaching out to kind of like support and people speaking about how we should deal with our mental health with the news. Should we know the amount of information we're having? Should we try not to have all this information that we're getting through the news? I feel like it's a moment where we feel really unsupported, and a lot of that comes from the guilt of knowing that we are watching a lot of really hardcore situations in the world happening through our iPhones when we open Instagram. And there's a powerlessness and a helplessness, and then there's people attacking us because we're not doing enough, and we feel like we're not doing enough. And sometimes I do believe that we're not doing enough, and that's how I've been feeling throughout this whole thing. So I had a lot of discussions around this subject with people that I'm gonna mention and that I'm so grateful for because I've felt quite guided. And I feel like I wanted to transfer their knowledge to you and the way they kind of suggested I navigate this time, especially when it comes to everything that's happening regarding Latin America and Latinos in the US and all the people within my circle that are personally being targeted. It's kind of woken up, of course, something that is not as awake when there's a war happening in a country that you've never been to, that you have no connections to. And then there's, of course, the selfish part of it's my own people being chased down right now. So then, of course, it gets home and then you're like, oh, what have I been ignoring politically? So that's kind of the context. I just had weeks of realizing that my approach of no news, because that was like a rule that I've had over the past years, is no news at all. I don't watch the news. I will find out things if I need to. I get really depressed when I watch the news. So I went from that approach to maybe like 8 weeks ago wanting to be informed of absolutely everything that was happening, of the amount of raids, of everything that was happening with the flotilla, with Gaza. I went from 0 to 100, and it took me to one of the darkest weeks I think I've had. And I was breaking down in the middle of the day, crying at work because I would open my phone and of course the algorithm understood that I wanted to be informed. So then I'm watching raids happening. I'm watching this kid in Gaza. I'm watching female mutilation in countries that I didn't even know about, but now I learned about within the same day as all the raids because the algorithm understood that I didn't want to close my eyes. And it was really interesting because then it put me into this really angry, depressed energy that I kind of didn't know how to handle. And I spoke about it with my mom and I started posting rants that you might have seen. And it felt like an anger towards myself for the amount of times I feel like I had like try to act blind about it. And the reality is that I'm not justifying things now, and the fact that I'm gonna tell you what I'm about to tell you on how I think we should be dealing with this is not really justifying my past behavior, because there's things that I still disagree on that I did. Like I was zero involved on the last presidential election in Colombia, which means now there's this person that's probably trying to push a dictatorship in power that I didn't even bother voting against because I had just kind of given up on politics in Colombia, which now I'm responsible for. So there are things that are within my power that I didn't do. And I think a lot of the anger and the guilt came from that. And then there's the rest of the things that are not in my power, like all the wars happening. But then it all gets mixed up into a big angry energy that I was carrying around. Now, this is to give you context to the fact that I came to this conversation with my mom, where she told me that there's an artist, I think it was Calle 13, who was about to release a new album and decided to withhold it. And his argument was there's no reason for me to be releasing an album right now when we're literally in the middle of the craziest amount of shit happening to humans, to my humans, because he's Latino, and to humans in Palestine, like to humans everywhere in the world. And he's like, I just don't feel like it's ethically okay for me to release an album right now. And my mom was talking to me about it because she was triggered by it. She was like, I think it's the worst timing for artists to withhold their art. And I think punishing the rest of us for how much pain humans are going through is not going to help anyone. And then I got really triggered by my mom because I was like, well, no, I don't agree, because we need to realize that we need to stop and talk about this. And if you have a platform, you need to be talking about this, whatever your platform is, however big or small it is, and whatever type of art you do. And then I was talking to my mom about an artist that I'm not going to mention, but a really big artist that is touring right now and that hasn't spoken about it, and it has made me really mad. And then my mom was kind of pulling me up on like, why are you angry? Like, I understand why you're angry about what's happening, but like, why are you thinking that you being angry is helping? And it's so interesting because I think I've had this curiosity lately about kind of some things that have made me angry, and I've had to defend myself when it comes to like rights at work for something that happened within a campaign. There's a lot of kind of conflicts that I've stumbled upon lately that I'm not used to, because I don't have a lot of conflicts in my day-to-day life. So I'm not used to this energy again. I used to be, because of the context I was in, but right now I'm not. And I see that when I start getting into this conflictive energy, there's something that low-key is addictive about it. And I'm not saying addictive like I enjoy it, but I'm saying like it stays and it lingers. And I will receive an email and I will stay angry for a long time. And I kind of like try to talk to everyone about it. And there's some sort of thing that I kind of think that when I'm defending myself or when I'm angry, I feel it's giving me some sort of sense of moral superiority. Like, well, I'm not the person out there killing this group of people. I'm not the person out there taking out rights. So somehow I'm better than them. And I think like that's maybe what's becoming addictive. I'm just noticing it now because I have such a chill, relaxed life where my nervous system is usually calm. And during the past weeks, I've been angry at so many things that then it's kind of transferable. So then it's not only the conflicts, then I have this conflict at work because of something. And then it's like, I want to defend myself and I feel like I'm right. And I don't want to get stepped on. But then my mom asked me like, how much of your anger right now is ego? When I was talking to her about what's happening with Latin America and everything. Like, how much of you is feeling good by feeling angry? Because she was like, you're not helping us. She was kind of telling me, I don't really feel like you being depressed, stopping sharing your light, but focusing on, I'm mostly going to post rants and I'm going to tell everyone how everything we're doing is right and whatever. I don't feel like that's more helpful for you within your voice, within the scope that you have at the moment, within everything that is part of your context. That's not the most useful use of your energy. It might make you feel good or like a little relief, like you're doing something, but are you? And then, of course, because my mom said it, I didn't believe it and I was really triggered and I was like, whatever. And then I went to work and I spoke with my friend Drew, who was also so impactful in his feedback on what I was feeling and his opinion. He's older than me and he's had a lot of lived experience. And he kind of like walked me through the fact that he had a period in his life where he was more into protest. He was really into activism. He was really watching all the news, learning everything about everything all the time. And he told me there hasn't been a time in my life where I've been the most unhappy and the least useful for society around me. And a lot of my friends within that environment ended up taking their own lives, unfortunately. And it was really interesting because when he said that, it's so interesting to like hear that from someone who has actually been in those environments and try to help in whatever way seems supposedly possible. Because that's the guilt, right? We're going in Australia to the beach or whatever, and I'm like, should we just not be doing this? Should we not be posting the beach? Should we be in a protest? Should we be taking a plane? Should we like... And he was kind of like telling me how, from knowing people that went to prison, from having all these heavy environments that he was able to witness, he realized that him being outside and him being free and having his freedoms and suffering or making his life miserable for no reason was not only unhelpful and a waste of time, but it was also disrespectful to the people that were there and to the people that were not having the freedom that he did, because he did have it and he was not even enjoying his day-to-day life or enjoying the morning coffee, because he was like, well, who am I to be enjoying this when there's someone in prison, like unfairly, when there's someone unfairly imprisoned, you know? And then from that conversation, he went in to tell me how he feels he's done so much more impact. And within that, we're speaking specifically about diversity and what he's gone through with racism and everything. And he talked to me about how he's had so much more impact by leaning into his art, by leaning into his strength. He's opening his own business right now, but he's also doing creative direction. And the way in which he has entered the system that he was criticizing for not being diverse enough, entered it like a Trojan horse, and from the inside, get hold of the capital, get hold of who's getting casted, and then make talent decisions accordingly, make career decisions accordingly, and actually have an impact within the scope of inclusion within the arts or within his specific industry in Australia. And it was so interesting because it's someone that, of course, he was not saying it, but I'm kind of like telling you that I'm getting this feedback from people that are coherent with what they're saying. They're not just talking. I've seen through the past years the way they handle themselves in life, the type of businesses they're creating, the type of people they're hiring. And it's really interesting because someone speaking to me from the point of I've been in that moment of just reading the news, not wanting to do anything else than protest, versus I'm now focusing on doing what I do best, and then from the inside put people up and help once I have a voice and once I have power, was so impactful for me that day. Because honestly, I had the same message coming from like 3 different people within the same day, which is the whole point of Trojan-horsing your way into systems in order to improve, change, or create whatever you want to create within them, rather than staying on the outside, looking at them angry, being really overwhelmed and feeling powerless. And it's easier said than done. And I'm not saying that we should not be also talking and speaking up, but I think we need to understand that a lot of our service and a lot of the way we can actually help in whatever way possible is to do whatever it is that is our added value and whatever it is that we do best, and maybe focus that on the real ways in which people can be impacted. And not only the real ways in which people can be impacted, but the ways in which people want to be impacted. And that's something that's such an interesting concept, because I was speaking to Jasmine about this, surprisingly, and I told her what my mom said. I told her what I was feeling, and she told me that she went through this during 2020 with Black Lives Matter, and with knowing that she had such a big voice through her work and through her platform, and not really knowing what she should be sharing. There was some links that were shared that ended up being scams. So then there's that guilt. There's like, I don't know how to help. And she told me she reached out to my friend Liv, who's going to be our next guest on the podcast, and asked her, how do you want to be helped? Like, how can I do something for you right now? I'm not really sure. I feel like I need to, and I feel guilty that I'm not. But should I share like black square on Instagram? Is that gonna make you? And it was really interesting because Olivia had a very honest approach to this, where she was like, it doesn't change anything. Like, that's not what's helping me at all. What's helping me is not only the way you are trying to be inclusive within your work, within your position as a director, within your position when you're producing. Not only that is what is actually helping me, but also the narrative that is being pushed is where I want to see changed. And it was so interesting because Jasmine was telling me, like, I hadn't had that perspective, but what Liv was telling me was that she's so fed up of all the content that's made about people of color and women of color and just people of color at the time specifically, is going back to like, let's make films about all the atrocities they went through. Let's just keep on pushing the narrative of how badly we've treated them. But she's like, I want you to be focusing on like creating like love campaigns on us, just creating a whole different narrative, because that's what's impacting me now as an actress, as in the scripts I'm reading and the things that I'm being approached for. So within your specific voice as a director and within your advertisement power right now, it would be so much more helpful for me that you like do real work and wander into ways of how to be inclusive on sets. Ask me what type of hair and makeup artists I need on set, because there's a lot of hair stylists, and I'm not sure how the statistics are around the world, but I'm just going to be super honest, and there's a lot of hairstylists right now in Australia that do not know how to do black hair, and they're still getting hired on sets, which I don't really understand how you can feel like you can tell people you're a hairstylist and you have a whole profession when you can only cater to a specific ethnicity. And then the fact that they're being hired and that this is now influencing who gets casted and what talent gets booked. Because if we don't have anyone that will do your hair and it will cost us more to have more stylists, then maybe it's just easier not to get you in. Those are the things that are affecting her, but we would not know if we wouldn't ask her. And I wouldn't have known that the same day that I just shower, dress up in 15 minutes and go to a set, she needs to wake up 2 hours before to do her hair. And that's unpaid time. All these things we don't know. And it's not about feeling guilty for not knowing, it's about asking. So here's me in my little room, angry because I'm still empathetic and I don't want what was happening during Black Lives Matters happening. So I am angry and sad, posting a black square, being like, well, here's me supporting that I don't want this to happen. But if I actually have some power within the industry, if like Jasmine is casting an ad, if like she's figuring out which hairstylists are getting hired and whatever, that's where she has power that matters. And it only comes from asking the person who you're trying to help how they want to be helped. And like this whole Olivia and Jasmine thing came back to the Trojan-horse thing. And I think it's important that whether you're listening to this and you're like an artist, or you are working in an office and you have some sort of hiring power, or whatever role you have within your society or your environment, your neighborhood, I think it's so important that we realize that we have power and we can impact, but it usually has to be on our level first. And it has to be on the basis of, rather than just criticizing how something is working and being angry and sad from the outside, trying to enter it. And a lot of that trying to enter it, unfortunately, and I'm saying this because I understand it's how it works. I don't agree with the fact that this is how it works. I just want to make this really clear because I feel like we have the right to be angry. I am angry. We need to be angry about a lot of shit that is happening. That being said, if we objectively look at how the world works and how interactions work, it serves you so much more to enter these discussions and to try to convince people and whatever in the calmest, most loving, gentle way that you can. Not through the most angry rants. People get closed off the moment they feel this energy from you, especially men. And I'm just going to be really honest, because a lot of this shit that's happening, it's because men are in power. And a lot of the times the way you convince men is not with anger, because they just closed off straight away. And then they're just going to tag you as a hysteric woman or hysteric person. And the thing is that, again, we can have a whole conversation about how we should never use the word hysteric. Hysteric was a diagnosis that was given to women before when they thought our ovaries were animals that would get out of control, and we would be hysteric if we would have the urge to speak in public or sexual urges or whatever, and then drug us. So hysteric, already a term no one should be using to describe an angry person. Nevertheless, we're just speaking about the reality of society right now. If you go towards someone in power, towards the man in your community in power, with anger, screaming, this shouldn't be happening, you should be hiring this, you should be, a lot of the time that's not gonna land. We just need to be so much smarter about this right now. And Sarah gave me an example of this the other day. She was telling me that she was in this dinner with another friend that we have that's a bit more feisty and a tad closer to me. And she was telling me that we were in this they were in this table with just white old men in a production environment. And he made a really crazy comment about hiring women with their hormones and whatever. Anyways, the type of comments that would set Sarah's friend and me up and go into are like, well, let me list you how I want you to die. Or just kind of like just go and just factual and list all the things and try to make them feel stupid. Men don't like to feel stupid. That's why a lot of really smart women in power, I'm gonna hate that I said that, but a lot of smart women that are actually making changes play it dumb to enter places and make males' ego think that things are their idea. And there's a weird dynamic that we don't talk about because we feel like we're showing our weapons, but at the end of the day, you need to understand that this works better. So anyways, my other friend got really triggered and started going at him. Sarah was like, dude, chill, got her to speak to someone else. Sarah then goes next to this guy as if it's her best friend and just starts opening up about some trauma that she had on a set and this is how I felt. And she just like zero aggression, starts being so open about her feelings and how she went through this and how she met someone, speaking to him like in the most loving way, and this is how it feels and whatever. This man ended up crying. This is like a 50-something-year-old white dude with a lot of power. Texted her afterwards, apologized, and Sarah was actually like telling me like, I cannot believe how this went down, because this is the last person in the whole world that would ever come back on an opinion like that. But I literally just played it like, oh my god, but this is how it felt. She kind of just played it into her feminine energy. That's what I'm gonna say. And it landed. I'm not saying this is gonna happen all the time, and I'm speaking about something that I'm not good at. So I just want you to know that I'm not the type of person who usually do this. I get really feisty and I get really into my masculine energy when I feel like this type of behaviors, comments, whatever. But a lot of the time it doesn't work for me. So I'm just being really honest about what I'm seeing around me and people that are actually creating an impact around me and how they're behaving and how they're going through love. They're going through that energy of, I'm going to lovingly try to understand how you're also a human, and I'm going to try to reach your humanity. And when we are defensive, it's out of fear. And it's always going to be the decision of fear or love. Always, in any situation. I do think it's that binary. And a lot of the defensiveness comes from fear, and it's okay, and it makes sense that we're afraid because we are being persecuted in so many ways. But I think it's interesting just to at least ask ourselves the question of, is this going to actually help the person I'm trying to help? Because when you're trying to defend other women, again, being black and white, back to what we were speaking about on the past episode on women guilting each other out and treating themselves as bad or good feminists, when you actually go into these extremes, you're not helping the person that you're trying to help, because your message is not landing. And if your message is not landing, not real change will be done. And I'm not saying these people don't deserve our anger. I will argue they deserve a lot of worse things than just our anger. But in the realistic context that we're in, I think we need to be smarter. And I think you speak more through art. You speak more through entering through love. You speak more through not treating people like they're stupid, but trying to, even if they are, but trying to tell them how you think differently in this way because of this, and trying to be curious. Why do you think that? Why do you think that it's problematic that this is the case? Why do you feel triggered by people being of different colors on your set? Why do you feel curiosity? And I feel like it will get us farther right now to focus on sharing light and sharing art and showing world beauty towards our platforms. I'm not saying don't post whatever you want to post and don't talk about stuff, but I'm just saying maybe it's smarter for us to Trojan-horse our way into change than to just scream at the people in power hoping that things will get better, you know? Anyways, that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for being here. I'm sending you all my love. I know it's crazy times and we're really overwhelmed. So please take breaks from your phone and social media. Don't feel guilty because you're not informed every single day. If there's days you don't want to hear news, tell people around you not to. And just protect your heart. Bye. Au revoir.